You know who I'm talking about, right? We all have one in our lives. A friend, a coworker, maybe even a family member. The person who just constantly complains. Well, let's get into how to handle this incredibly common and, let's be honest, totally draining situation. And there it is, the sigh. You hear that and your shoulders just instinctively tense up. You know exactly what's coming next, that same old loop of negativity. It's a script you could probably recite by heart.
If that little quote instantly brought a specific person to mind, trust me, you are not alone. This kind of nonstop complaining is, well, it's exhausting. It can really strain a relationship and just pull your own mood right down with it. So, what do? How do you handle it without, blowing up the friendship or losing your mind? That's exactly what we're going to break down.
All right, so first things first. Before we jump into the how-to, we've got to understand the why. The very first move isn't to react, but to actually look under the hood and see what's really going on.
Think of it this way. The complaints are like smoke signals for a much bigger fire. It's way easier to complain about a dozen little things, right? The traffic, the coffee, the weather, than it is to get vulnerable and talk about the one massive thing that's actually stressing them out. The complaining is just a symptom. And here's where a little brain science comes into play. This is a huge factor. See, our brains are basically hardwired for survival, which means they're always on the lookout for danger. This built-in negativity bias makes it so much easier to see and get stuck on what's wrong instead of what's going right.
And check out this number. It's kind of mind-blowing. Our brains can latch onto 5 negative things for every 1 positive thing. 5. So for a chronic complainer, their reality might genuinely feel like it's just one storm cloud after another, with barely any sunshine breaking through.
So, your first strategic move is to try and cut through all that static. A simple, supportive question like this one can work wonders. It's an invitation, really. It shows them you're listening, and it gives them a chance to talk about the real problem instead of just rattling off the list of daily annoyances. Okay, so you've tried the empathy route, but the complaint train just keeps on rolling. That brings us to our next strategy. This is where we turn the camera around and focus less on them and more on your reaction. So on the one hand, you have the typical response, right? You ask a ton of questions, you get emotional. You basically fan the flames. The problem is, you're actually rewarding the complaining with all that attention. But on the other hand, there's a totally different approach. You become, well, a boring listener.
It actually has a name. It's called the gray rock method. And the goal is exactly what it sounds like, to make yourself as uninteresting to complain to as a plain old gray rock. You're not being rude, you're just taking away the reward. You stop being a fun audience for the negativity.
And this right here is a perfect example. A simple, that's rough, followed by nothing. Silence. It acknowledges what they said, but it doesn't give them anywhere to go with it. It's a conversational dead end, and sometimes that's exactly the point. But, what if this person is someone you really care about? A partner, a best friend, a sibling? The gray rock method might feel a little too cold, or maybe it just isn't working. Well, then it's time to level up to direct but gentle communication. The funny thing is, a lot of chronic complainers have no idea they're doing it. A simple question like this one, delivered in a really calm, curious tone, it's not an attack. It's like you're just holding up a mirror, inviting them to see their own reflection for a second.
Here's a fantastic little pivot you can use. This phrase does 2 things. It validates their feelings, but it also gently points out that this is a repeating pattern. And more importantly, it shifts them from being a passive victim of their problems to an active problem solver.
Now, this can be a real game changer. But I gotta say, your tone is everything. It has to come from a place of genuine curiosity, not confrontation. It makes them hit pause and actually think, yeah, why am I telling you this? What do I want here? And this is just classic communication 101, but it is so important. The second you say, you always, they're gonna put up a shield. But when you use an I statement, you're not accusing them. You're just sharing how their behavior makes you feel. It's about the impact on you, not a judgment of them. Okay, so you've tried understanding, you've changed your response, you've even had the direct talk, and they're still at it. This brings us to the final and frankly most important level. You have got to protect yourself.
At a certain point, your own mental health has to be the #1 priority. This doesn't mean you have to cut them out of your life entirely, but it does mean you have permission to set some firm boundaries. You can decide how much time and energy you're willing to give.
I really want you to let this one sink in. It is not your job to be an emotional dumping ground for someone else's endless negativity. Protecting your own peace isn't selfish, it's essential self-care. Your well-being has to come first, period.
So let's zoom out and put all these pieces together. What's the big takeaway here? What's the game plan? Well, it's a clear step-by-step strategy. It's really a 4-level approach. You start at level 1. Just try to understand what's really going on. If that doesn't work, you move to level 2. Change your own response, become that gray rock. For important relationships, you might need to escalate to level 3, address the pattern directly. And always, you have level 4 in your back pocket. Protect your well-being by setting those boundaries.
And that really brings us to the final question, the one you have to answer for yourself in every single relationship you have. Everyone's line is different, but knowing where yours is and having the tools to defend it, that is the absolute key to keeping your connections healthy and, more importantly, keeping your own peace of mind.